Middle school teachers, what is the cringiest thing you've seen a student do? Director of technology here. I don't really have much to do with the kids at the school I work at, but I definitely have a cringy moment. Called down to the middle school from my office to debug a problem for a teacher. The classrooms in this building all have two doors. One door opens into the building hallways, the other opens to the outside. My office is across a field from the middle school, so I decide to just cut across the field and enter the side door to the classroom instead of going all the way around the field and entering the classroom from the hallway. Bear in mind that these outside doors are almost never used by anyone except for an occasional fire drill. I open the door and step in to see a room full of students facing away from me and towards their teacher. The student closest to me scrambles to click X on her browser, but not before I see full on hardcore yaoi hentai. Did I mention I work at a Christian private school? She turns bright red and with visibly trembling hands she closes her laptop lid. I burst out laughing, which interrupted the class. The teacher looks to me in questioning confusion and the students stare in silence. I casually walked over to her and said, loudly enough for the classroom to hear, "Let's not look at memes and Facebook jokes at school, guys." Her flush red face contorted with fear suddenly relaxed. Her trembling hands stilled. I laughed again and went and debugged the wireless access point issue I was called down for. No point getting her expelled over hormonal changes and curiosity. Dude, you saved that poor girl's existence. If people she knew found out about that and she got punished her for it, she would have wanted to die. Valentine's Day and a boy brings a girl a dozen roses. They were both in my homeroom, so I watched this all go down right in front of me. I had literally never seen these two have a conversation before, either. Girl didn't know what to do with roses at 7 AM, so she threw the roses in the trash can literally 20 seconds after it happened and went on her merry way. The boy never found out. We had this one kid in our 8th grade class stick his entire hand in a cake that was being passed around for a party, grab a chunk and started eating it like a Neanderthal. It was chocolate and his face was covered. When he finished his chunk of cake with everyone looking in disgust, he then proceeded to lick every finger. It was torture watching. He also ended up being the kid that threatened to blow up the school at the end of the year. I had a kid carve his own name in his desk, but he couldn't figure out how we caught him. So what you're saying is that I should carve other kids' names into the desks. Around the 8th grade dance season, they call it prom. There is a whole lot of cringiness roaming the halls. One popular tactic among the boys was explained to me. We ask the girl to prom, and then we run away so she can't say number. Taps temple. I caught the student on Google search attempting to look me up. He spelled my name wrong and my name is very common, so I wasn't worried. I sent him home since it was an after-school homework club and then went through the rest of the history, which included boobs, naked women, Megan Fox nudes and Megan Fox panties. One of the other students in the class kind of picked up on what was happening and mentioned that he has also been kicked out of the public library for similar reasons. Once a friend of mine described his quest as a kid breaking into puberty, trying to figure out P. He described how he would Google boobs and variable equivalents and not getting much. It was honestly the most relatable and funny story ever. He was telling it in spiritual life class. There was always this kid that would go up to guys, shake their hands and deeply sniff their necks. One day a teacher asked why he did this to guys and all he said was, if I did it to girls it would be weird. To be fair, the kid had a point. I once offered a boy a My Little Pony color by number sheet, ran out of Super Mario. The boy's response: "Mister, I'm not gay, I'm a lesbian. I like girls." Well done. Saw a student write boy puss on the whiteboard thinking nobody was looking. He's had enough 4chan for now, I think. I was demonstrating convection, which included burning some newspaper. One kid piped up with "That smells like incest." He meant incense. They were too young to get it, but I nearly died trying not to laugh. Maybe that kid's siblings burn newspaper while they smash. My husband teaches English at a middle school. He brought some creative writing assignments home to grade, and since I'm an assistant teacher for much younger humans, kindergarten, he drafted me into helping him sort through the mess and grade them. We've made good progress through the stack when I pick up a paper that had a kiss mark near the name in lipstick. Okay, that's odd, but I'm used to working with kids who are only just figuring out bathroom habits. A little lipstick on a report is hardly weird in my book, plus middle school. Then I see the name, Hun, who is our husband. Without missing a beat, R is this goth kid who looks like a rainbow threw up on him after having marathon sex with a unicorn. I look back at the kiss mark. Glitter lipstick. Nice shade choice if the kid is going for goth pale. I read his creative writing assignment. I get up halfway through to go pour myself more wine. It's extremely well written gapy featuring my husband and another teacher at the school. The kid is going places. I don't know what those places are, but he's going places. I had a student who would constantly butt into people's conversations, and when they asked him to mind his own business he'd stand up and proclaim nobody likes me. Everyone thinks I'm so annoying. Haha, and he'd laugh while everyone awkwardly stared at him. Another kid literally told me one time that he would just act annoying so that he could impress a certain group of boys. They were not impressed. Well, at least he's honest with himself. I had a 6th grader lick a book. He definitely tried to keep it on the DL. So he looked around, made sure no one was looking in his direction, and then licked the book. It was a tongue poke, then a full out lick up the spine of the book. I had a classmate who had to give a presentation using PowerPoint. So there is a computer hooked up to a projector that is pointed at a screen that fills the wall. This guy sticks his USB with his presentation and the computer and it automatically loads the images he had on it in a gallery. He had a full folder of pictures of girls from his class he had downloaded from Facebook. That was kinda awkward. My mom is a middle school English teacher. Once, a student snuck a bar of soap into her class, ate it, and proceeded to run out of the classroom and start vomiting. Apparently, he did it to impress his friends. One of the kids responded to questions like Pikachu. Shame that a good kid is going to look back on those days with absolute horror. Joke's on you, she never let anyone stop her from reaching her dreams, and now she's a Raichu. Not a student in particular, but a whole bunch of them. I was a substitute teacher for a few years on my university breaks, but last January was the worst middle school day I've ever had. 8th grade science class. I ask the kids to open their textbooks and work on the assignment. A girl shyly raises her hand and says, "Miss, there's something inappropriate in my book." Of course, some kid drew a dong. I calmly tell her to erase it and move on. 3 more kids say the same thing. I say, if you have something inappropriate in your book, please just erase it. Every kid starts whining about how there's dongs in their books. Since they won't shut up about it, I take the offending books and replace them with different books from the back of the room. Every single book had a huge dong drawn in it. All 90 something of them. Crudely drawn dongs, artistic dongs, Squidward, fricking SpongeBob, you name it, it was there. The kids rioted. I almost quit. I taught 4th grade last year, and I had a student who was 12 years old, middle school age, held back a few years. She always did very odd things to try to impress her classmates, but they were relatively tame, until there was a line in the bathroom and she took her pants off, squatted over the trash can and peed. 4 or 5 girls came running out of the bathroom and told on her. I once confiscated what I first thought was a note being passed in class, but turned out to be a gay fanfic one of my students wrote, pairing 2 of her classmates. Had an 8th grade girl pretend to pass out because she was upset. She got written up for screaming that another girl was a fricking bee in the middle of a science lesson, then got upset when that other girl didn't also get in trouble for looking at her wrong. In the dean's office she was so upset that she pretended to faint, complete with back of the palm to the forehead and dramatic exhale, and then laid on the floor until we were forced to call an ambulance. Before the ambulance came, Mom walked in. She worked right across the street and said, "Damn it, Jennifer, we're not doing this again." So evidently this was a regular happening around their house. At this point, the girl squinted her eyes open but refused to actually get up. When the squad got there, they checked her vitals and basically knew she was fine. They had to take her because we can't take chances with this stuff in schools. We all just kind of looked at each other and shrugged. So, yeah, that was cringy. We get drug seekers who fake seizures a lot. This medic once told me about a doc who called him over to the doorway after bringing one in and says watch this before saying loud enough for the patient, who was faking a seizure right then. I'm not sure if it's a real seizure because she didn't pee her pants right on cue, she pisses herself. I will relay a short story that my 7th grade bio teacher told us. In that class we dissected a cow eyeball. The year before us, a student pocketed the lens of the eye. Looks like a yellowish hard thing about the size of a peanut M&M. In his next class he stood up and swallowed it in front of everyone. Another teacher told me about a student he had who would come to school in different costumes, ninja, soldier, etc., and stay in character the whole day. I do not remember the details, but there was an incident in which he threw throwing stars during a talent show. In 6th grade science class, our teacher asked if anyone knew what the arms of an octopus were called, and this kid immediately raised his hand and blurted out testicles. Everyone was laughing, including the teacher, who also snorted. His face was so red. Kid wore clothes to school with the price tags sticking out. When asked why, I was informed that this was to let everyone know he was wearing new clothes. You should tell them that it doesn't really count unless you staple the sales slip to the front of your shirt. A girl got herself off in class using the edge of the seat. Not discreet either, as many of her peers had a WTF look on their faces. This girl was sweating hard. Seriously, most uncomfortable office meeting and parent conference. I work for a private school. This middle schooler recently started dating another one. The girl decided to come to school in a black leather miniskirt and black leather tank top combo. At recess, which I watched because it's a small school, she was dancing all around in front of her boyfriend and hanging of the fence a la stripper. It was hilarious and so cringy. I had a student from a conservative Muslim family wear white see-through sweatpants with a visible black thong on underneath. She brought the clothes to school and changed in the bathroom before class started. Not me, thank God, but my stepmom caught a kid jacking off during class. I'm having a flashback to the time I was in middle school and we were watching a movie in science, and it's completely dark in the room. I decide to scan the room to see who's actually paying attention. Barely anyone, only to see the weird kid with his hand in his pants, staring at the science teacher. One student wanted to ask me if I had a doppelganger. What he actually said was, "Do you have a dingleberry?" I also had a girl ask me what food stamps were, which isn't surprising because the district is very affluent. I explained, but she still seemed confused, so she asked what it means to blow a trucker for food stamps. Evidently she was reading a book meant for a more mature audience, and her worldly knowledge hadn't caught up to her reading level yet. We had a student who started going to each class he passed, leaning in the door and yelling "Mom's spaghetti" and moving on. Bet that made everyone a bit nervous. They were talking about dank memes which were about band class BTW. I was told, "Mrs. Confuzzledeb, don't look up dank memes, okay?" I told them that I had been on the internet since before they were born. I was born into the dankness. I was molded by it. You merely adopted the dankness. By the time you found B, I was already a man. There was the student who had his hands in his pants, moving his hand up and down almost to a rhythm. That was cringy. I just stared at him in the eye till he noticed that I knew, and then he stopped. I had one of those. He wasn't allowed to wear pants or shorts with elastic waistbands after a while. I organized an activity that was sort of like Never Have I Ever, but positive and meant to build empathy. Basically, a student would say "you're in my boat if," and whatever they say that is the same as you. You have to stand up and find another chair. Great activity. One of the girls, who I often found puzzling because she just did and said things that were nonsensical, started her period and got blood all over multiple chairs. Some kids start looking at the seats and have no idea what's going on. The girls in the class figure it out, but don't say anything. They just avoid said tainted chairs. The boys, however, are as dumb as a box of rocks and are touching it and sitting in the seats. I'm sitting there horrified. Since 1, that's disgusting. 2, I didn't initially know who was pulling a carry-on. 3, how the heck do I nonchalantly stop the activity to get this biohazard cleaned up and no one really notices? After a short observation of the students, I noticed that the one girl was the unfortunate cause of all this. I told her that she was to do a favor for me, and I stepped outside. I asked her if she knew that she started her period, and she said yes. I sent her to the office and then went back in the room for damage control. I honestly don't know how I concocted a magical excuse, but I told all the kids that we were invited to go to the library for silent reading time but had to go now because all the good squishy seats would be taken if they didn't hustle. They believed me, and I sent them down there. A few girls stayed behind that figured out what happened, and I told them I knew and sent them as well. I finally get on the phone and inform the unfortunate janitor about the bloodbaths in my room. When I had my period at school I was constantly paranoid about standing up and there being blood all over my chair. It happening while playing some kind of weird musical chairs is like some horrific nightmare. Not sure if this counts. Had a student projectile vomit in the middle of class. This is in middle school. Poor girl sat in the middle of the room. Vomit managed to get into the seats next to, in front of, and behind her own. Somehow. So much barf and so much shame in that little girl. But then she didn't want to go to the office. She just wiped off her mouth and wanted to stay. This student spent an entire semester speaking in a Russian accent for an experiment. No one questioned him. First day back from winter break, he is back to talking normal. We were all incredibly confused and his parents ended up going to the superintendent about our school allowing bullying. A Korean guy at my high school randomly started talking in a British accent around junior year and kept it up until graduation. Sometimes he would talk in his normal voice. I teach history and let my students do a PowerPoint presentation on the history on anything. Some kid did the history of furries. He came to class wearing his fursuit. I teach high school now. I teach 8th grade. This student had talked to me previously in private about how the girl he liked was in my class the same period he was. He said that they had almost dated when they were both at their previous school before transferring to the one where I teach. On top of that, all the other students were aware that he had a major crush on this girl. So, one day, he finished his class walk early and apparently he just couldn't take the hormones raging inside of him anymore. He blurts out, loud enough for everyone in class to hear, "Look, girl's name, are you gonna date me or what?" I pretend to work through this while cringing so hard on the inside. I see every other student in the room work through this. From shock to laughter to pure amazement and curiosity as to both why he would choose this moment and what on earth her response would be. The girl very politely said, "I'm just not looking for a relationship right now. Thanks for asking though." Former middle school teacher here. During state testing, I had a student who wet his pants, but didn't say anything, so he sat in a puddle of his own pee for several hours. Had a kid who legitimately believed he was a Sith. Like from Star Wars, his helicopter mom would come flying down to the school crying religious discrimination if you told him otherwise. He would relax his throat and talk in a deep voice and say it was his real voice, but he disguised his voice to not scare his human brethren. On free dress days he'd wear an all denim outfit with high waisters and denim vest over a denim shirt. I had him for science so he'd blurt out things about alchemy from an anime he was into whenever we were working with a periodic table. He also had a girlfriend who lived in Mexico, who was also his cousin. Humankind cannot gain anything without first giving something in return. To obtain, something of equal value must be lost. That is alchemy's first law of equivalent exchange. In those days, we really believed that to be the world's one and only truth. A bunch of kids bought collared shirts so they could pop them like Nick Crumpton. After 10 years of middle school, I should had a novel's worth. However, so many years of middle school decimates your brain, and as someone else said, middle schoolers are generally cringy most of the time. The kid who wrote Mrs. Sharpnett loves cookies on the board when he sincerely meant to write cookies definitely ranks high up there, though we all cringed that day. I agree with the desensitization that comes with being a middle school teacher. I've taught 8th grade for 10 years. I really don't have one cringe moment that really stands out. They just become part of normal life in an 8th grade classroom. Sigh. You have been visited by the wealth rat. Subscribe in 12 seconds and he will share his wealth with you. Thanks for watching. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.